Hello, and welcome to This Strange Reality. On today's episode, we hear from Mike. Mike is a father, a veteran, and describes himself as a part-time paranormal investigator. He details how a chance meetup with a friend for lunch forever changed him and his outlook on the paranormal. This is episode 3, titled A New Friend. Here's Mike.
My name is Mike Archer. I am a true believer in the paranormal and unexplained. I am a retired Army combat veteran, spent 20 and a half years in the Army. My paranormal journey began at an early age. At the almost age of 3, almost died of what was called Raya syndrome. It was due to being sick and at the time, and my mom gave me like maybe half an aspirin or a little bit of an aspirin, and I ended up with Raya syndrome and almost passed away. I would say that that was my very first out of body experience, because I can remember everything within that room, every detail, where the bed was, where the bathroom. I can remember doctors coming in and hovering over me, as I'm above my bed, floating. So that was kind of my first experience that I've ever had that I can recall. And then just growing up in a family that has a history of the paranormal, some of which I didn't find out until after my older brother had passed in 2021 from COVID. But we grew up in this one house in Riverside, California. That house, there was always something going on, and it was either the cupboards opening and closing on their own, movement at night, maybe a little bit of shadow figures here and there. But most predominantly, my sister had an experience that she forever changed her life, in that she was grabbed by her ankles and ripped off the bed. And what she still recalls to this day is long fingers with long nails that grabbed her ankle. So I remember a priest or reverend had to come over, bless her, bless the house, and then it stopped. Um, but from each house that we lived in, which I can remember, I have, and I don't know if it's because of the Raya syndrome that I had, which affects your liver and your brain, but I can remember everything since I was 3 years old. So details, addresses, smells, locations. I can draw a map of every single house that we've lived in. But growing up, there was always incidences of the paranormal, and it was just, it became part of our lives. It's just like when you watch TV as, well, I don't know how everybody else's upbringing were, but for mine, family night watching TV could have been watching episodes of brand new episodes of Unsolved Mysteries. Um, and then as I got older, sightings and other TV shows that came out and just explored hauntings and paranormal and UFOs. And that was part of our family. That was something that was kind of ingrained inside of us. And so I would say I had little experiences growing up, but the biggest experience that I've ever had was actually seeing a full body apparition of a little girl, and it was confirmed at the same time. To backtrack a little bit on this story, I joined the Army in April 96, left for basic training in May of 96. By mid June, since we were cut off from the world, no electronics, no TV, no radio, my drill sergeant at the time pulled us in, and he told us about the Khobar Towers bombing that happened in Saudi Arabia. And he was emotional, he was upset, and we were emotional. And we're like, wow. I graduated, went to my very first duty station in Fort Campbell, Kentucky. And the very first day I got to my units, they told me, hey, turn around. You see those guys? And I'm looking at these other soldiers and they're dressed in desert uniforms. And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, well, we're deploying. I'm like, okay. I was married young. I had twin daughters young. So they were still in California. So the plan was to leave them there until I came back from deployment and pick them up. And so when I asked where we're going, they told me, did you not hear about the Khobar Towers bombing? I said, yes. Well, we're going there. I'm like, oh, okay. So during that deployment, obviously, I made friends, other soldiers, people I related to, especially if they're young like me at the time in 1996. One of them was somebody that was from California, like I was, and he was married, he had 2 kids. I'm like, oh, this is great. We hung out, talked, and all that stuff. And so after our deployment, he got sent to another company because he got promoted. Usually that's what happens in the military. You get promoted to a certain rank, they'll move you because they don't want you in charge of people you were at the same rank with. So that there's no conflict, and so there's nobody trying to overrule your new rank and position. So it had been probably about 3 months after that deployment that I didn't see him. And I just was happening to leave and go to lunch. And I saw him in the parking lot and he was like, "What's up?" I'm like, "What's up?" And we hugged and we talked a little bit. He talked about how he brought his wife and kids. I said, "Me too." And he goes, "Hey, come on over. You want to come over for lunch? You got anything planned?" I'm like, "No, I'll come over." So I followed him in his car and we went to his house, which was on base housing. And it was like this old on base housing, like old brick 1950s, 1960s type of housing. That part of Fort Campbell, Kentucky, that housing was probably some of the most original housing that was built for families. Of course, over a period of time, they had to build in, air ducts and ACs and heaters and whatnot. But it was, I can't remember when Fort Campbell was established. I know it was Camp Campbell at one point, but I would say that housing alone was 1950s, and this event took place 1997. I know it's no longer there. A lot of the old housing were all demolished. Now there's new duplexes and parks and whatnot that are in its place. And so we went into the house. He introduced me to his wife. We went to the kitchen, and the way the kitchen was situated is as I'm facing her and he's off to my right, to my left was the long hallway that led all to the bathroom and to all 2 bedrooms that were down the hall. And so we're sitting there, we're chatting, we're having a good time. We're talking about California, talking about the Army, talking about kids. And I hear their kids playing in and out of the bedroom. They're running back and forth between the bedrooms. And at one point, I knew where they were going to run out. And so I turned my head and I looked. And as I did, I saw their daughter, and then I saw their son, and then I saw another girl. So I knew they only had 2 kids because I had 2 kids. That was one of our main talks. I knew what their kids looked like because I seen pictures. We exchanged pictures. We're like, "Oh, look at my son, look at my daughter." The third girl, I see her even to this day, clear as day. She had this long, flowy, dark brown hair, and she had a red bow in her head, or at the top of her head, and it had streamers that flowed into her hair as she ran. And then she had this white dress with a big, bright red belt around her waist. I didn't pay attention to, like, say, the legs, if they were see-through. She looked exactly like a human being, just a friend running with them, playing with them. And so I immediately turned to their friends. I'm like, oh, that's great. You guys just moved in here and your kids already have friends. That's great. Now they have somebody to play with and make the most of it. They looked at me stunned. And the wife looked at her husband. She looked back at me and she said, they don't have any friends. We're just here by ourselves. School doesn't start till September, so they just been here in the house playing and that's it. I go, but who's the other girl playing with them? And they looked at me confused again and they said there was no girl. There was no friend. And so I just sat there like, am I a complete idiot? Like, is my vision going out on me at a young age? Like, what is it? What's wrong with me is what I was thinking at the time. And the wife asked me, well, what did she look like? And so I explained everything, the red bone hair, long brown hair, white dress, red belt. And she was just running with him in and out of the bedrooms. And so they looked at each other and the mom got up and she started walking down the hallway. So I'm looking at my buddy. We're just like dead silent, just eye to eye looking at each other. And then he nodded to me. He's like, let's go. So we got up from the table and then we followed behind his wife. And we got down to the hallway and we stopped at the kids' bedroom and they're on the floor playing with some toys. The mom goes, hey guys, you guys having fun? Everything okay? They're like, yeah, mom, we're having fun. And she was like, okay. She goes, let me ask you something. Do you have a friend that you're playing with? And they were quiet. They weren't answering. They weren't saying nothing. And so the mom was like, excuse me, I asked you a question. Do you have a friend over here? And so the little boy was the first one to pipe up. And he was like, oh, yeah, mom, she's really fun. She plays with us. She's really nice. And she likes all the toys. And so then the daughter says something along the lines of, yeah, mom, she's so pretty too. And oh, man, she has this big red bow in her hair and the streamers and this beautiful white dress with this big red belt. And she could have said more, but I was just standing there like, I'm not going crazy. And both parents at the same time turned and looked at me, like dead eyes looked at me like, really? And I checked the deuces. I was like, I'll catch you later, man. I walked out the door and I got to my car and I turned my car on. I sat in their driveway for 10 minutes with the car running because I was trying to, I can't even think of the word. I was trying to figure out what the heck just happened. Because not only for the first time in my life, I've experienced the paranormal. I have felt things. I have seen things out of the corner of my eyes. But to see a full bodied apparition of a little girl, full detail, and then confirmed at the same time by the children it was playing with, it blows my mind to this day. And to this day, I have not seen anything else like that. And I want to experience and I want to understand and communicate or help or in any way try to get close to that thin veil that everyone talks about in the paranormal community. I just remember I felt relieved. I felt like, okay, this is real. But I also felt just shock and just so many questions running through my head at the same time. I remember I drove back to work and finished out the day. I know I ran into him at some point, maybe a couple days later, and he was explaining to me that him and his wife she was mainly freaked out, but I could tell he was freaked out. And I'm like, hey, I didn't mean to freak you guys out. What I saw was like an actual person. I didn't see a spirit. I didn't see a ghost. To me, it was an actual person. It wasn't see through, wasn't misty. It wasn't like some Matrix style movement going through the hallway. It was like a little girl friend playing with them, running in and out of the rooms. And so I didn't see him for probably about 2 or 3 months. He went off to training, what we call PLDC, Primary Leadership Development Academy, or course. When you're becoming a non-commissioned officer, you have to go through this course. I remember I ran into him finally. This is probably 3 or 4 months later. And I go, how's everything going? What's up? He's like, well, we moved out. I go, what? He said that they moved out and they moved to an apartment in the next town over. And he explained that things just started happening in the house. Cupboard doors were opening and closing. They'd walk in the kitchen in the first thing in the morning and all the drawers would be open. They would hear footsteps going up and down the hallway. The mom, more importantly, if she yelled at the kids or was upset with the kids, she would get scratches out of nowhere, like on her arms, her chest, her stomach. So they're like, we need to go. So they ended up moving out and moved into this apartment. He said that nothing followed them and that they're good and that everything's good and they're happy. But he said that it was just crazy. And I told him, yeah, how do you think I feel? Because I saw it. I think that was probably one of the last times I spoke to him. They ended up moving to Germany and we lost contact. And I don't think I ever asked them if their kids were still seeing or playing with this little girl. They knew it was the little girl. Their kids were asleep and they would hear laughing going up and down the hallway, the pitter pat. The way the housing is this is old wood floor too, wood paneled floor. So you can hear anything that was going across the floor. So they would hear walking at night. And I know there's a couple times they did, at least what he told me, he'd wake up because he heard his daughter or he heard his son getting up to use the restroom. There was only one restroom in that housing that they all had to share, and nobody was up. Nobody was in the bathroom. Kids were knocked out in their room. So he couldn't explain it. In the Army, we have PT, or back then we had PT. He would get up for PT and he'd walk down the hallway with his bag and go in the kitchen and the drawers would be open. They were old school, like wooden drawers or whatever, but they're not the kind where you pull out and then they sag or lean. They were like straight industrial type wooden, old school wooden drawers. They couldn't explain it. They just got tired of it. And so when I finally met up with him months later and they told me that they left and moved into an apartment and everything was good, and it's almost like he was quick to not really discuss it. Like, we're good, nothing's with us, we're out, we're in this apartment, everything is good. Like, he was very quick to not want to talk about that house again. It's just like how there's different categories of how people believe and not believe things, especially when it comes to the paranormal. There are some that somewhat believe but don't care to talk about it. They somewhat believe, they'll talk about it, but they won't talk about anything they think or have experienced. Then there's some that do believe and are either too afraid to talk about it, or they think if I do speak about it, it's going to continue to keep happening. And then, of course, the people that believe and they always want to talk about it or try to get some type of different answers and opinions and theories so that they can rationalize what they have experienced. For him, and especially his wife, I think they believed, but they didn't want to talk about it. Like, it happened, it was happening at the time. Now that they're not there, they don't want to talk about it because if they may feel that if they do, whatever was there might go with them, or attach to them or their kids or whatnot. He was so quick that last time we talked, in the way he talked to me, that it's just, he believed. It's something he'll probably remember for the rest of his life and his wife's life too. it's something he probably would love to forget and pretend like it didn't happen. I've thought about going onto like military, like Facebook groups and whatnot, and especially looking at Fort Campbell groups. But there's so many, there's like thousands. Last time I remember looking, it was somewhere around, I don't know, 2,000 different groups alone from Fort Campbell, Kentucky. I would love to be like, hey, did you guys live at this house on Fort Campbell anywhere in these years? And did you have any experiences? I don't know how many hits I would get. I don't know if I could ever find my buddy. I don't know whatever happened to him or his wife or kids. I would love to find that. Would be so interesting. Like family photos, and all of a sudden in some photos there's this little girl hiding behind like a Christmas tree or at Thanksgiving or something. Had I know then what I know now, I probably would have stayed there. I would have investigated. I probably would have asked my buddy, hey, do you think you and the wife and kids can step out for a little while? Maybe go to the park or go somewhere so I can kind of talk and investigate for you and help out. At that moment in time, there were so many things going on in my life, and I was barely a year into my Army journey. I would say it further strengthened my belief that yes, this does exist. So as the years gone by and TV shows started popping up, and people started describing their stories. Oh, I saw this person, this lady in the white dress walking down the stairs. I'm like, well, I saw a little girl in a white dress running with some other kids. But to this day, I've been trying to, I would say I am a part-time paranormal investigator because all my full-time has always been, either work, my family, and so just trying to find time to go and do maybe events where there's paranormal investigations and whatnot. Last month I went to Ghost Conference up here in Washington State. I knew there was going to be a bunch of people, and there were, and they were great people, and all of them were just so loving, and they all had this same passion and love for the paranormal, but not just the paranormal, but for the dead itself. We went to these couple investigations there. One of them is supposedly is one of the most haunted houses here in Washington State, the Walker Ames house. I brought gear with me, but I didn't think I'd capture anything because it was so loud. People walking around. It's an old wooden house. People talking. No one's standing still. It's everybody, walking around to go each room. So I just knew I probably wasn't going to get nothing, and that was fine. And for the most part, a lot of the questions that other people were asking were just so caring, like, how can I help you? Do you need help? Are you lost? Just this sense of, how can I help you? I would say the great thing was that there was one guest who decided to start yelling and provoking, and one of the tour people for that specific house was like, mm-mm. And so he went downstairs, told the main people, and they're like, oh man. So they went upstairs, and I think they had a one-on-one conversation with that person, and that person was asked to leave. And then once they left, everything went back to the same way. But anyways, I always try to sign up and gear up and try to head out and go to those. To this day, I have not seen anything like that. I have seen mist. I have seen shadow figures. To see something so human, it made me see and made me feel there's still a human side to the paranormal that oftentimes some investigators forget. They forget that a lot of these spirits were human once themselves. How we treat them and how we conduct our investigations and whatnot should be with like care and compassion and just understanding, and also knowing at the same time you can go into these purported haunted locations or homes and you may not ever experience or feel or see anything. Doesn't mean something is not there, but maybe because lack of compassion and respect and care, you may not always get any type of answer, whether it's physically, audibly, or electronically with all the gadgets that we have. But yeah, I to this day still continue to go to events, go to investigations, and try to see if I can just talk to the other side and get an understanding and maybe some type of hope of what we may encounter when we meet our own end. Anytime I go somewhere and I do something paranormal wise, I do it with that care and compassion and love. I don't want to be that person that's angry. I don't want to be that person that provokes. I don't want to be that person that thinks that I'm going to send you off into the white light to wherever you need to go. I just know that how I treat the dead is the same I want to treat the living. And like I try to each and every day with love and compassion and respect, tolerance. There's so many theories and possibilities and that are just endless. And I don't know if we will ever know the answer until we ourselves are no longer on this earth. But sometimes you got to take a leap. Some call it a leap of faith, maybe a leap of truth, maybe a daring leap. But have an open mind to further explore that maybe experiences that you're having are valid because others, millions of others, have had the same type of experiences. And maybe take the time to just get knowledgeable on the unexplained and maybe give it a shot. Seek out like-minded people, talk, or go to events. Go to an event with other paranormal investigators from all walks of life, different races, religions, creeds. Go out and talk. And that's probably the best thing and first step that you could ever do, getting to be part of this community and see what other people have to offer with knowledge and with their type of experiences, and see if they match up and see if they can help or you can help them. And that's where, the care and compassion and love goes into.
That was episode 3, titled A New Friend. I'd like to thank Mike for sharing his story. When I first heard Mike's story, I thought it was fascinating that not only did he see a fully formed entity, but also got confirmation that others were seeing what he saw right then and there. Something that typically doesn't happen when it comes to paranormal occurrences. Because when we do see or experience something that we can't explain, it sometimes feels isolating. And that isolation could cause us to keep our stories to ourselves. But like Mike said, there's so many people out there that have experienced something that they can't explain. Something that they keep with them every day. But we might find that if we share those stories and talk to one another, we won't feel as alone as we thought we were. If you have a paranormal or anomalous story you'd like to share, you can email it to stories.thisstrangereality@gmail.com. Again, that's stories.thisstrangereality@gmail.com for a chance to be interviewed for the show. Thanks for listening.